And I'm joined, there we go, I'm joined on my left by Alison Bartel and Karen Watchhorn, who are a couple of operating room nurses. To their left, Dr. Eric Bohm, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and on the far end of the stage is Phil Hossack, who's a photographer, pardon me, at the Winnipeg Free Press. And there we go. And so before we get going here, guys, you all just came back from a very, I guess, interesting trip, to say the least, in Nicaragua, part of Operation Walk Winnipeg. And maybe if Alison, could you just give us a quick synopsis of what you were doing?
Operation Walk is originally founded in Los Angeles, and we had an opportunity, a small group of us, to join with the other Canadian Operation Walk team in London in 2009, and we went to Guatemala then, and so they invited us to form our own team this time to be the second Canadian Operation Walk team and to go to Nicaragua in October. And we went there to perform knee replacements for people who don't have any option to get that kind of medical treatment in their own country. So we did 49 knee replacements in 3 days there.
Now that sounds simple enough, doing knee replacement surgery, but maybe before we get into your thoughts on all of you of being there, and really this was a life-changing event for all the patients there. We've got a short video that Phil shot in Nicaragua. We'll show that first, and then we'll come back and talk with you all.
I was in the hallway and saw a patient walking down the hallway with his family. Everybody's crying, and found out from one of the doctors that that man had been in a wheelchair for years before we came, and now he's running down the hallways.
A lot of these patients came with really no hope other than this as being the solution for their joint pain. In Canada, yes, we have waits, yes, we have delays, but patients expect that eventually they will receive their care and that they will receive a high level of care when they do so. That really isn't the expectation of a lot of people in the developing world. They just don't have access to it, and many of these patients had been suffering for 5 or 10 years and could have been candidates for surgery many years ago.
From my perspective, it gives me great satisfaction and pleasure to be able to do something that really is fairly easy for me to do, to put in a hip or a knee replacement, that changes their life so profoundly. So that gives me great satisfaction.
He would need to buy new pants because now all of his pants are not going to fit him because he's taller and his legs are a little longer.
Sinceramente, pues les digo, con el corazón en mano, que he vuelto a nacer de vuelta. Porque, como les digo, yo me sentía
So he's just really grateful because it was a really difficult time for him before.
In Nicaragua, you don't walk, you don't move. There's really no other option for them.
First of all, it meant pain relief. Secondly, it meant that they could work. A lot of their jobs aren't sitting at a desk or easy jobs. They're physical, manual labor. They're out in the field. They're bending for cops.
It doesn't bring you down to that sort of base reality of eating or not eating here. When you get a hip problem or osteoarthritis in your knee or whatever, I mean, it isn't sort of the difference between poverty and your basic quality of life.
And that's probably the most difficult part, who gets chosen and who doesn't get chosen. We live in a fantastically privileged society, and there's an opportunity to go back and give something back to a community that already has no access. I think also it builds our team. You know, we go down there as a team of individuals, and we come back as a really strong surgical team. And I work with those people every day, and now they know me a little better. I know them a little better, and I think it's good for our Concordia team. I think we're all stronger as a result of these trips.
When you're faced with something like that and you don't see any hope because there's no way you could afford implants, you know, that will change your life. Never mind finding a surgeon, finding a hospital, all those things. There's no way you could have access to that. So I'm sure over there it's a miracle.
Turn around. Turn around.
Wow. So a knee replacement in Canada to a lot of people is kind of routine surgery, and maybe it'll help you get around, do your shopping a little bit easier. But in Nicaragua, it really is a life-changing event. Who would like to, maybe Eric, can you talk a little bit about, you know, what's involved here? And I mean, really, there was one patient here who hadn't walked in 10 years.
Yeah, so it certainly, the clinical scenarios we see down in Nicaragua are quite different from what we see in Canada. And knee replacement in Canada is largely an elective operation. You do it or choose to do it because the pain and disability you're having from your painful arthritic knee affects your life, your quality of life, and you feel that the surgery, the risks and the benefits of the surgery are worth it. And I think when you go to somewhere like Nicaragua or a third world country where there's not the same access to this type of surgery that there is in Canada, that the indications for surgery start to change a bit, because if you're unable to work or take care of your family, it's very difficult for you. So those are the kind of patients that we're able to treat when we go down there.
And so why did most of these people need to have knee replacements? Because it was 39 patients for 49 knees, so a couple of them had 2 knees replaced.
Right, so, you know, from a medical point of view, the most common reason for knee replacement is osteoarthritis, sort of wear and tear.
What does that mean?
Well, wear and tear of the knee joint, old age, wearing out. It's quite often bilateral, so if you have it in one knee, it's common to have it in the other knee. So many of these patients had bilateral knee osteoarthritis. Some of them had it so severely that they felt they wanted to have them both done at the same time. And many of the patients we just did one knee replacement in, but they still had osteoarthritis in the other knee, but not quite as severe or bad enough to warrant the operation.
And how do you develop that affliction in your knee?
It's not entirely clear. It's probably a combination of bad luck, genetics, obesity, activity level, all play a role. Down in Nicaragua, it's probably a larger component of genetics that play an important role. In Canada, we know that obesity is a very strong risk factor for developing knee and hip arthritis.
Karen, I'd like to bring you in here. So as an operating room nurse, you got to see people, you got to see the before and the after. So what was it like to experience you know, this life-changing surgery with these 39 patients?
Well, it wasn't only life-changing for them, it was life-changing for us as well. On this trip, I didn't get to go into the operating room. I'm an operating room nurse here, but I was more of a coordinating role this time. So I got to see more of the ward patients afterwards, more than I would have been able to see had I been in the OR. And it was just phenomenal to see the gratitude and to have them tell me through interpreters what a difference it was going to make in their life. Like you said, some of them hadn't walked for 10 years. And so it wasn't only going to make a difference to their life, it made a difference to their family's life. One of the wives said she'd spent her whole time just caring for her husband, taking him to the bathroom. He couldn't do anything. And now she was going to be freed up as well.
So we've touched on how it affects the patients and their families. How did it affect you?
Oh, it just gives you a whole new perspective on life and the things that we take for granted here in Canada. We're so fortunate. We just assume that whatever we need, medically speaking, we'll get, and with not too much of a wait. and to see people there who, it wasn't a matter of waiting, they just never thought it would be a possibility for them. So you just really appreciate the system we've got here, the healthcare system, and the expertise.
Now, Karen, you and Allison were the driving forces behind this excursion from Winnipeg, right? So you also had to do some fundraising for it. How much did you need to raise, and how did you get that money?
It was really actually hard to determine how much we would need because our advisors and teachers were from Los Angeles, where they throw a garden party and they've got a lot of people with a lot of money and it's done. And we also didn't really have a realistic idea of how much we needed because it was all based on American system and American, like shipping from Los Angeles. Shipping from Winnipeg is a different thing. But we started off thinking $100,000. You know, that'll be sort of our ballpark. We ended up raising more in the line of 180 approximately, and we have a little bit left over to sort of help start the next trip. But the bulk of it goes for shipping. So we did bake sales, we did all kinds of little things that were sort of labor-intensive things. And then we started doing we had a wine and cheese, we had, I don't know, just really inexperienced fundraising. We had a benefit concert. We sent out a letter, a patient appeal letter to all the former patients of Dr. Bohm and his colleagues. And that was a really successful fundraiser because people like that knew the difference. They knew what it meant to have your life before joint replacement surgery and your life after, and they wanted to help other people in the world have that same chance. So that was really, really neat.
It's cool how you melded both the modern way of fundraising, which is to send out a letter asking for money, and the kind of junior high school bake sale.
That was us.
You know, come and buy some muffins.
It was a real learning curve. We're OR nurses, we're not fundraisers, but we had to learn a lot.
Now, Eric, can you tell us also what's involved in knee replacement? I mean, I don't know how extensive an operation that is. Is that the kind of thing that can be done over the lunch hour, or like what exactly are you doing to a person's knee, and what are you putting in there?
Right, so that's a good question. It's a fairly major operation. That's why I had such a large team going down. The operation itself is just one part of it. We've got the whole assessment beforehand, the surgery itself, the rehabilitation afterwards. The surgery itself takes only about 45 minutes, and it involves making an incision over the front of the knee. We basically cut off the worn out cartilage in the knee and replace it with metal and plastic, and then close the knee up. For me, that's a fairly easy thing to do. I do that every day. So, as I was mentioning earlier, it's quite gratifying for me to, probably for all of us, to do something that's so easy for us, yet changes their life so profoundly. And I see the outcomes of my patients every time I run a clinic. They're very, very thankful. But it's a different and unique experience to see that somewhere else in the world, where their goals for surgery can be quite different from what my patients here, the goals and expectations of surgery are.
So once the surgery is complete, what kind of rehab are these patients looking at until, I mean, we saw them walking around with walkers. Yeah. I mean, are they out walking on their own right now?
It's interesting. I was talking to some of our colleagues down there, and they seem to have almost a different perception of surgery. They come to see you because they've got this knee that doesn't work anymore, and then you cut out their old knee and you put in a new knee, and they think, well, I've got a new knee, I better go try it out. And they get up the day of surgery and start walking around. Which is different from what we often see here in Canada. It's a bit more of a prolonged recuperation after surgery. It's a big operation, it's painful, you need pain medications and so forth, and you need to work hard with the nurse and the occupational therapist and the physical therapist to get your strength and range of motion and mobility back. But we really, I think what struck myself and probably all of us was just how motivated these patients were and how appreciative they were of what we could offer them.
Phil, I'd like to bring you in here now. You went down to cover this on behalf of the paper. Can you tell us and everybody here, you know, kind of the non-medical, what you saw here as a non-medical professional? Because you're looking at this from the journalistic point of view and trying to tell the best story. So what were the stories that you saw there?
I think the overall story here is a giant story of paying it forward here for North Americans to be able to take the time. All these people took their own personal time. They weren't on salary. They weren't being paid to go do this. This is something they did on their own. And it's an opportunity to watch that sort of giving back and where it's really needed. We take this type of surgery really for granted in Manitoba. I've told all these guys the story of one of my relatives who had complained about having to wait for his surgery here. And when he got the phone call, it was in May, and he said, "Sorry, can you call me back in the fall? It's golf season." And I found that what Eric was just talking about, the attitude of gratitude down there, was really amazing. And to see that and to share that with the readers here, I compared, when I first met these people, we sat in the boardroom and talked about the project, and one of the first things I wanted to do was photograph an operation here and compare a local patient with a patient in Nicaragua. So we photographed a guy named Bill here, and you'll see that in the paper tomorrow. And when we went down there, I kind of focused on primarily the first two patients, and one of the patients was Juan, who we saw walking in the video today. Eric actually did his left knee on the one of the first surgeries we did. And well, Bill here is very, very grateful. His experience, I think personally, is very different from the experience of Juan in Nicaragua. Juan had no life, the way he described it. I spent a lot of time with him and his family, and I followed him home when he left the hospital. When he walked out of the hospital in Nicaragua, he carried his crutches. He didn't use them. And that's to me speaks volumes of what we have here and what we take for granted, that maybe I had the opportunity to think about that doing this project, as I do with a lot of projects that I shoot for the Prepress. And it gives me pause to see the appreciation and to see the dedication and the skill of the people that we have at our fingertips, at our beck and call. And it's a totally, some people use the word life-changing experience for people like Juan down there. I think he described it as more. He said, now I have a life. It didn't change his life, it gave him back life. So just the opportunity to share that.
And so we're going to have a story in the paper tomorrow with this video. Will you also, and with a number of pictures obviously, will you have a slideshow to go with all of this?
Yeah, I think the slideshow, there'll be what we call a POV, point of view, on our website. There's this video and time-lapse photography of two surgeries kind of put together, I believe, as one. And these pictures and more video available on the website. And in the FYI section, it will be primarily this project tomorrow. It'll be nine pages of photographs and stories.
Phil, were there any other people who you met down there who you thought really were captivating stories?
Were captivating stories? You know, it's they're all captivating stories. Excuse me. It was very concentrated. While I did get a chance to sit and chat with people like Juan, who gave me the opportunity to be part of his life for the 4 days that he was in the hospital, and to go home with him and meet his family and see where he lived. Other than that, I really can't single out anybody. They're all amazing, and as well as the people from Canada and the whole medical team, the support staff. It's not just nurses and doctors that go in these. It's you know, one of the amazing stories is sitting over here, Jordan Middlestead, who's a local patient, who's had both his hips replaced and is waiting for a tune-up on another one. You know, and he was down there shooting video and taking pictures for the team.
Jordan, you want to put your hand up? Now, I've got only a couple more questions for you, but I should ask I should say that if anybody in the cafe here has any questions for you guys, just feel free to put your hand up, and we'll put a microphone in front of you. Now, Alison, you mentioned putting some money away for the next trip. What is the next trip? Where's it going to be, and when?
We know for sure it's going to be back to Nicaragua, partly because this was our first mission as Operation Walk Winnipeg, so we learned a lot that we can use to really do it better next time. We're hoping, or sort of working towards deciding in the next month or so if it's going to be next fall or next spring or the fall after. We kind of have some momentum going now. We sort of really want to capitalize on all the learning we did. So we also built relationships with the staff there. We got a chance to really, the operating room, which is where I was primarily, was also staffed with Nicaraguan medical professionals, and they worked alongside us. So by the end, we were, you know, very close, promising to take Spanish lessons, and they promised to take English lessons. And we really want to go back and build more of that relationship with them. We did some teaching with them. I know the surgeons had some teaching time they did with their surgeons, and we worked alongside the nurses, and also the instrument cleaning crew was teaching the Nicaraguan crew how to clean the instruments and all that stuff. So we really felt like we made a real connection with them there. So, and as well, we'd like to go back and see our patients that we saw this time and sort of follow up on them. So we know for sure it'll be Managua again. And when, we're optimistically hopeful it'll be October 2013. So.
And Karen, what kind of response did you get from your coworkers at Concordia? And do you think that will your experience have encouraged more of them to participate in the next trip? And do you think maybe this program might expand beyond your hospital to other hospitals in the city?
There was a real interest from a lot of people at our hospital, so much so that we had to refuse some people. We didn't have enough room on our team because, of course, we had to pay for them to get there, pay for their accommodations. So we didn't have enough space for as many people as wanted to go. So there is interest, more people want to come. We did shut some slates so that we could send more from Concordia this time, but we still needed to go further afield. We took some nurses from Seven Oaks and some staff from the Grace and Health Sciences as well. And so next time, likely, we would be expanding it even more. And
with this kind of surgery, I mean, we've been doing knees here. Could this kind of trip be expanded to include other kinds of surgeries also? I mean, I don't know, are hips in as big a need as knees are? Maybe Eric, you can answer that.
Yeah, we were a bit surprised when they sent down the x-rays for us to have a look at before we went down. We had probably, I don't know, 70 patients knee x-rays. 90 and a handful of hip x-rays. So I think the majority of the osteoarthritis is knee osteoarthritis down there. I think they may have had some charity work in the past doing hip replacements, I'm not sure. So it sort of turned out that the majority of the work that we needed to do for them was knees. You know, I just wanted to add one other thing to what you two were saying. I think, you know, I personally feel that we got out as much or more than we put out to go down there. When I think about the relationships we built amongst all of our team members and getting to know people, you know, I don't know the people that work in the bowels of the hospital washing the instruments, but I got to meet them and work with them because I did that in Nicaragua. We often have surgeons working together when we're down there. We don't normally have that here, so I'd work by myself with a physician assistant or a resident. So it's a very excellent opportunity to learn from your colleagues as well and see how they do procedures and little tips and tricks and that kind of stuff. So I do think strongly that we got out as much from the trip as we were able to offer down there.
So do you think also that because of your experience down there and getting to know everybody on the team, that the team will perform better back in Winnipeg?
Absolutely. You know, and I think the other important point to make is that we had two hospitals down there. We had folks from Seven Oaks and folks from Concordia Hospital. And if we expand that even further in Winnipeg, well, there's cross-pollination of surgeons, support staff, nurses, physical therapists, and so forth going down next time. So I think it's great.
Well, congratulations. I didn't see any hands up in the Café audience. So I'd like to thank Alison Bartel, Karen Watchorn, Eric Bohm, and our own Phil Hosick for joining us up on stage here to talk about their trip down to Nicaragua and Operation Walk Winnipeg. And when you have done, maybe in advance of your next trip, come on back, we can talk about it, and I would love to see you back here following the next one in 2013. And thanks for joining us here at the Winnipeg Free Press News Cafe.
Thanks very much.